Okay, this is for Joycey. I'm hoping that this makes some sense. I'm trying to find something that has kind of the blob situation of those elements. Um, Even if it doesn't, I think it will be helpful. Because what if, like, let's say this is the blob, and I don't like it, but I want the highlight, and I want it to be on the balloon. Now, this is where you want to take a nice medium value or a light one, because you can always come back when it's dry. And we're going to do a combination of even wash and glazing. So I'm going to come in here with a glaze, and you want to have a nice controlled, pick your favorite brush. Let's say this is the balloon and it goes like this. You don't want to paint like a curve. It'll look really weird and it will draw too much attention. You want to create the flat edge by placing it where you want this highlight to be narrowed. You do not need to picture anymore. If I place this here and pull it back, I'm getting this beautiful edge now instead of the blobby weird edge. But instead of following it that way, I want it to be varied. So if you can try to vary the direction of these strokes, and if you can't, let it dry and then come back and do a glaze on top. For example, let's say I let that dry. Now I want to do this side of the shape. You don't want to get it too dark because you don't want it to look like it's a hole of black going back. So I'm adding some water to make sure, because this is more, let's say this is the background of the highlight going back. Say I do it like that. And you can do backgrounds too. The main thing is that you're using a brush to create this beautiful clean highlight like it looked in the picture. But you don't need the picture to show. Let that dry, and then over here, see how it's too wide? I want to finagle the shape, but I don't want to go drag the brush all the way up because I want to have that volume of the balloon on both sides. But see how I'm shaping this highlight to make it less bumbly. And then over here, I'll do the same thing, but I don't want to lose the white, so you got to be real careful how far you go in. You're just going in enough to get rid of that blobby edge. And the blobby part will still show in there, but it won't be so clunky. You know, if you come in like this and shape it, but shape it thoughtfully. Don't just shape it up and down. You can do some up and down. And you could look at the picture if you really feel lost, but I think you can do this because you know the picture so well because you've tried it so many times. You know, you don't have to do the whole thing, but just look at this edge. Look how this shape of a highlight compares to the gluey pile that you saw. And for fun, if it looks cool, you can pull it out into the rest of the balloon. And you can also do a little bit of back runs. But see, I missed a piece on purpose so that I could come back and get different values. And maybe even leave little flecks. It depends on which shape. You want to do something different on every shape so that the highlights are all light and bright, but they all can be slightly different. You just want to don't lose too much of the width of it. See, if I start going up and down like that, it starts to look weird. So that's why you want to make sure you go side to side. And this is where the glazing comes in, because you can come back in and build technique around it. So let's say this is the next one over here. Instead of a blobby shape, going side to side. And then, of course, as it gets to the center of the balloon, it's going to be more vertical and less showing that perspective. But see how the glazing in here? This old painting, you don't throw out any of your attempts because you can always build on them in some way. I'm just being very selective about how I paint around these highlights, because then we can focus on technique instead of just a material that was used. And brush strokes, there is just nothing like them. They make this beautiful clean edge. And even if you've got stuff underneath like this, going to do it all up and down to some. It's clean, and it shows the cleanness of that without losing the highlight. You just want to be strategic so that you don't lose that highlight. And I'm leaning on my pinky because I'm holding my breath and leaning on my pinky to get hard edges. The Friscuit's a shortcut in many ways because it's just plunked. Whereas this, you have to really think it through. You can use different values as you're doing it. This is where the picture is not important. The technique is important. This is where that toolbox of technique, you're able to explore the beauty of the medium, even if the picture's not in play and even if it loses the accuracy of it. You can even do a little dry brush. But see how it's all about this clean edge. This is in the brush control. It's the brush control that gives you the shapes of highlight. So and you can see you can build up to dark more. Your picture's not done, but you don't want to develop the top. The top and the bottom are too uniform right now. The top looks beautiful, simple as is. The bottom just needs to be pushed into the water with value and clean those little things up. Boom, it's going to be awesome.